I'd gotten arrested. I had lost relationships. I had lost jobs, all these consequences, right? But now it's like, hey, you can die.
Welcome to the Council of Dudes podcast. I'm your host, Vinny Brusco. I am a father, a husband, the founder of Agora Social Club, a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a certified life coach, and a facilitator of the Council of Dudes men's group. This podcast is here to help you tap into and follow your golden thread, that feeling that pulls you forward to become the best version of yourself. If you're someone who's into personal development and self-help and is looking to live a life of more alignment, then this is the podcast for you. Subscribe to the channel, click the notification button, and follow along on the journey of the show.
What's going on, guys? My name is Adam Vohra. I'm a recovery coach, and I also am the host of the Finding Purpose podcast. I encourage you to visit my website, www.adamvohra.com. You can learn more about what I do, and super grateful to be here at Agora and on the Council of Dudes podcast.
And here we go.
First off, thanks for going through this journey before the podcast of running to CVS and Staples to get fucking SD cards because those ran out of space today.
Yeah,
so
dude.
That was exciting.
Awesome, dude. Thanks for inviting me down here. This is great.
Thanks for schlepping me around Westchester.
Well, dude, I finally got to come down here. I see a lot of the content you put out. I've seen the events. I think what you're doing here is great.
Thank you.
So to like be able to be down here and spend the morning with
This is the first time you're here?
This is the first time I've been down here.
Really?
Yeah.
I was thinking that maybe, I'm trying to think if you, I thought that you would have been to one of the speaking nights we did with Brandon, but that was...
No, they always fell on days that were conflicting and you know, I'm kind of deep. I'm in Fairfield.
Yeah.
But, dude, this is great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming and touring around Westchester with me. We did your podcast on January 28th, 2025. And I remember that specifically because it was my birthday. I didn't tell you that because I didn't say anything about it. But that was one of like those days that went like an ideal day. I told you this when I saw you last time. I was like, I did jiu-jitsu, I did your podcast, picked up my kids, I got ramen for dinner with my family, and then I went and got a tattoo. I was like, this was the perfect. Awesome. It was like a perfect day. So thank you for being that. You will always be in my memory because of my tattoo. So thank you. It was a great day. It was a great birthday.
That's so awesome. You should have shared that when we were recording, but
at that point it was only jiu-jitsu and the podcast. But yeah, we were recently on a call with Jesse and his Monday night group. I popped in quickly because it's always like at the time where I'm doing bath and bed. And you said something that registered with me that really, I was like, wow, what a deep way of thinking and handling relationships. And I'm going to share it. You said, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said I stopped hanging around people. I'm going to fuck it up. But you like, for people's sake. Like you were emphasizing that hanging around people just because of their status or clout or exposure is not always ideal when it doesn't align with who you are. And I sat there, I was like, man, there's so many transactional dynamics that you come across, especially in doing podcasts and opening a business and all these things, that you start to lose the true authenticity dynamic gets tainted.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I was referring to when I talked about that, I was talking about how, you know, over the past several years, I just dabbled with a lot of things. I threw a bunch of things at the wall and really wanted to see what stuck. Some of that was nonprofit consulting and some of it was events, you know, and part of those events was curating these rooms and with a affluent crowd or developing partnerships based on, hey, this is going to benefit you just by, you know, being associated with me. Because I think a lot of people tell you that in business, you know, and like, you know, and I started chasing that, like, like I need to be in this room because X, Y, and Z. And it's like almost like I need to be seen. And I saw myself starting to do that, man. And I realized I wasn't enjoying myself.
Wow.
B, you know, they say don't ever meet your heroes, right? You meet some amazing people. Don't get me wrong, I've met a lot of amazing people, but you've also met people that you put on a pedestal, right? And totally underwhelming. I noticed. So for me,
Underwhelming in what regard?
well, in a sense where they're just human.
Right.
Like, I don't know why I put them on this pedestal. I don't know why people put other people on a pedestal in general. We're all just people, right?
Right.
And for me now, it's really just aligning with the energy, and and really like trusting my gut when it comes to like who I want to incorporate into my space, who I want to actually dedicate time to. And that's something that I learned as I committed a lot of time to people, where once I got to really understand them better, like the alignment wasn't there. It wasn't that mutual, feel good energy like I had with you this morning.
Yeah.
Where it's like I can be comfortable, I could talk, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
And I think those are the type of relationships that I really am leaning into. Having, had that reflective moment towards the end of last year when I was like, hey, are these events helping people that I'm doing? And they were, but really it was more just like partnering with brands or people who just really just wanted to elevate themselves and be the center of attention, frankly, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Right? The intention to help was lost in a lot of these things, and shame on me, frankly, for like I end up allowing it to get there, where I could have been kind of, hey, like let's keep our eye on the ball on this project. Like it's the initiative is to help people. So then towards the end of last year, I was like, listen, like if I'm going to do events, I really want to build it around my brand, because the podcast is growing. I wanted to start doing live events. I launched the purpose panels. And I really wanted to make sure that the rooms that I was curating were people who wanted to be there, not to be seen, not to be, rubbing shoulders with X, Y, and Z, not for, the open bar,
Right.
they, you know what I mean? Like they were
Yeah.
there purposefully, and that's, exactly how I kicked off this year,
Yeah.
and I continue to do.
Was there, and again, you don't have to name names, but was there a particular person that was like the catalyst for you where you're
Yes.
like, okay, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important because especially in any endeavor, and this could be in any facet of life, whether you're hosting a podcast, building a business, whatever it is, you're going to come across so many different people. And there is this internal, for me, dialogue where I'm like, okay, like you feel the energy's off, right?
Yeah.
You could almost feel like it's just not flowing, and you almost square peg round hole it. You're like, I'm gonna just force this to be. And it's important to have people around you to say, I don't know, dude. Like I would kind of, let's reframe this, and because you want this outcome for whatever reason. It could be for likes, for views, for downloads, for money, for being seen and feeling validated, and all these different, I'm sure it's multifaceted and multi-layered, but there's this component to that that's playing into this, and yet it's also disingenuous and not authentic. And it's like you have to override your own desires to get to that point.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to have those moments of pauses and be like, hey, what does this say about me? Right?
Yeah.
You asked if there was a specific, person, right? One of the things that I learned was the type of personalities that make me uncomfortable, right?
Wow, that's awesome.
And I think that's important to
I never
know.
looked. So it's funny you say that, because it's really funny you say that, because I could think of people that make me uncomfortable, but I don't necessarily, like, it's more like for me, I'm looking at it from like an energetic field, but there's a personality within that. And is that personality coming through in multiple facets, right? Like through different bodies. So continue. Sorry, but that's an amazing way to look at it.
Yeah.
That's an amazing way to look at it.
It's like I learned that, people with very anxious nervous systems and me don't mesh well, because I'm not an anxious.
Were you ever?
Maybe like in the height of like my drinking and my addiction, I was, but I numbed that with alcohol and drugs, right?
Right.
But now I'm just not. I don't know why. Like I've done a lot of work to get to a place where, I can look at something and be like, am I gonna like even give a shit about this tomorrow, right? But people with very anxious nervous systems, when I'm around them, that anxiety becomes contagious, and I become someone I don't want to be.
Yeah.
I become a little on edge. I can become a little guarded. I am a little defensive when I
Sure.
get like that. So it's like, hey, like, why is this person affecting me this way? At the end of the day, this is life. I'm going to come across plenty of people like that. I have people like that in my family,
Sure.
right? And how can I be better at meeting them where they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things for me was just understanding, like I'm not the cause of their anxiety.
Right.
I'm not the cause of their whatever mannerisms that are just rubbing me the wrong way. Like they're not doing it because of me. That's them. And I just need to take a pause and just like, A, like reiterate that to myself. B, it's like I need to hear why they're anxious. I need to figure out the root of this anxiety. And oftentimes, like, I'm not going to be able to see it like from like a surface level. Oftentimes it's really, really deep rooted, right?
Yeah, of course.
And but like just acknowledging, hey, like that's this energy. I know that puts me in a different place where it literally makes me uncomfortable. Is just that self-knowledge alone just allows me to kind of navigate and understand and change how I treat these people, and how I can actually help them in a way, right?
Yeah.
Because that's ultimately what you're trying to do. Because at the end of the day, we're still gonna have to work with these people. We're still gonna have to communicate with people and personalities that make us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's just about like understanding, like, hey, like, let's really just own my side of the street and try to connect with them in any way that the message is being received.
Yeah.
And sometimes it means just pausing, bro, and being like, hey, listen, like, I understand you're super anxious about this. I don't work well with, under an anxious, 10. So what can we do to ease the anxiety and really address this? This would be very direct communication. And that's something that I do with, folks in my personal life who are like that. And, in hindsight, probably should have done that with, said client. I kind of just like ate it and became a shell of myself, and also felt uncomfortable pushing back when in places the way I should have, right?
Right. Why did you feel uncomfortable pushing back? Just based off of who they were, what they had available to you, type of thing?
Just didn't want to get in a confrontation, bullshit conversation.
It's that simple.
Like,
yeah, I got it. Yeah.
I knew how they would react.
Yeah.
And it was just like, is it worth the energy for me to just kind of say this and it wouldn't even matter, right? But in hindsight, maybe I should have, right?
So that's always the interesting part of it, is that there's always this, and I totally understand what you're saying in regards to, is it worth this energy up front right now to address this thing in a way that maybe makes me feel a little uncomfortable, but in the long run might be beneficial? Or should I just kind of like, it's not that, like, just keep it moving type of, and I'm more of like that, where I'm like, all right, fuck it, it's not worth my energy. But then there is that moment in hindsight where I go, maybe it was worth my energy at that time. And it's not always like like I'm uncomfortable. Like I'm okay with most uncomfortable conversations, but for the most part, it's like that hindsight that you look back and go, oh, maybe it would have been worth me speaking up in that capacity.
Yeah. I mean, it also was like, I was contracted to do the job. So I also was like, hey, like, they're paying me. If this is how they want it, this is how they want it. Do I think it's probably not a good idea? Yeah.
Right.
But if this is how they want it, this is how they want it, right? That was kind of also how I left it. And I was working with someone else on this project as well, and they had already adopted that, we're like, dude, I'm just gonna do what they tell me to do, because like it doesn't make, my opinion doesn't matter here.
Right.
And that's so I kind of pushed back like throughout the terms of this this project. It was like a 6-month project, and towards the end I was just like, all right, let's just get to the finish line.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then relationship, thank you for the opportunity, and
keep it moving,
bro.
Yeah. It's interesting though. I really do like the idea of like what energies don't resonate with me in like these personality traits. Like that's a really powerful question to sit with and focus on, because again, you see these embodiments of this energy, but you attribute it to the person versus the actual energy source itself. But to be like, oh, this type of person makes me feel like this. It's a really, and it's interesting, just that shift of personality trait versus person dilutes the power of the person.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that the people who make us feel that way, they make us feel that way because they bring up shame in our own life, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So because I think shame like has a lot to do with it. I think shame is like has a lot to do with like rooted in the insecurity component, right? And we're most uncomfortable with people who we can look at and then it incites negative emotion inside of us as well, and we become self-reflective, and we're like, maybe we were like them in a way, right?
Of course.
And like having kind of discovered that, and I do like the reason I'm bringing up shame is because I love Brene Brown, right?
Yeah.
And I listen to a lot of her work, and for me, that was really important. Becoming a recovery coach, and also understanding the relationship between shame and addiction.
Yeah.
So that's something that she always says. She's like, listen, like, if someone is triggering shame in you, right?
Elaborate on the word shame, though, because, on a cultural level, the word shame brings up kind of certain emotions, right? And shame can so how does shame in this context show up, and what's like the energetic frequency with the word? Because like you could say like right and wrong, right? And then if those words have a power, right? Yeah. Where shame has that same kind of connotation to it on a cultural level, but how is shame showing up like in the day-to-day or in the emotional state?
Well, I think, say, like, I'll give you an example. Let's say someone yells at me for something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if my immediate reaction is, I'm a terrible person. How did I make this mistake? Rather than say, oh, I fucked up. I shouldn't have done that. And I think shame is more owning it as an identity as opposed to a behavior, right? So and I've dealt with this personally, I think that's for a very long time in my life, I harbored a lot of shame towards my story, towards certain things that happened in my life where I was almost told that I was different. If people know this, you are less than, right? And shame kind of sprouted very early on in my life. And shame only compounds, like unless and with shame comes secrecy, and with shame comes a need to quiet it down. And that's why a lot of people resort to drugs and alcohol. It's kind of like what came first, the chicken and egg, addiction and shame,
Right.
But that's a toxic combination. It was a toxic combination for me and, many alcoholics and addicts out there.
Yeah.
What's freeing for it, though, is talking about it, right? Because shame can't live in the air. Shame can't live in, when I'm telling you something vulnerable about myself that doesn't make me feel good about who I am. Once I get it out there, if someone who you're talking to is listening with empathy, right? Real empathy. And it's like, you know what? Like, me too. Like I felt that way before.
Yeah.
That's how it dies, right? I forgot the question. I kind of just like...
We're talking about Brene Brown and how she kind of uses shame as a vehicle to express when it comes to like addiction and alcohol.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I've learned, like through like a lot of the alcohol, like the education that I've been doing for the recovery coaching. It's just like how powerful shame is, like played a role in my life.
Yeah.
And how powerful it just plays in everybody's life, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of alluded to it earlier, how they're previously had all the things that happened in the morning. Us having to run to Staples, us having to run to CVS, right?
Yes.
So what would have brought on this
feeling of less than.
Yes. Feeling of, oh, I'm being judged. Feeling of that's shame.
Right? Yeah. For sure.
And in a way, I feel like you telling me that was a way to just like relieve yourself and get it out there.
Yeah.
And and at the end of the day, like you knew that I'm honored that you trusted me to say that to me.
Yeah.
Because, at the end of the day, like I get it. I get it.
Well, you also, just for context, before the podcast, the SD cards were full. So we ran to CVS. CVS was completely out of SD, like literally not one SD card. I was like, really? This is insane. So then we were at the Staples, got the SD cards, came back, and then we were formatting and getting everything situated. And I was expressing that in a previous version of me, I'd be profusely sweating. I'd think that you think I'm a complete fucking moron. And here we are. And I think it's just through understanding that, like, things happen, right?
Yeah.
But you said it also in a way, they're like, well, it also shows like your commitment to this. And I was like, wow, like that hit me in a place. I was like, wow, I didn't look at it that way. I didn't look at it as like, I also didn't own it and be like, oh, fuck, I'm sweating. I'm uncomfortable. He thinks I'm an idiot. This is fucked up. I was just like, all right, it is what the fuck it is. Like, we're just cruising. And then to add the power behind that and say, wow, this just shows how committed you are to this. I was like, oh, thank you. That's very empowering. So thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of people in that situation who have been like, dude, let's just like reschedule and go get breakfast.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like seriously, like,
Right.
you know, us three would have just went working out breakfast, right? Like,
Right.
you know, but at the end of the day, like, yeah, you jump through the hoops, you get this done, and you know, and then it also made me feel really, really special. You know, the fact that you're willing to do all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, like, I think it's funny because you also, in that statement, just acknowledge the progress that you've been able to make yourself, right?
Sure.
You know, and I think that's like a really cool moment to have personally, and we deserve to give ourselves those moments, right? I don't do as good of a job as I would like to just like pause and be like, look how far I've gone.
I don't think anybody does. I mean, I think that, I mean, I don't either. I'll have it in like micro moments like that and I don't give it any weight to it, where I'm just like, all right, like this is a version of me that would have shown up this way. And I'm honoring the growth, but I'm not even putting that much, as a deep thinker, I'm not even putting that much weight into this moment. But in the moment to reflect it back to me and say, hey man, that's like a big progress step that you're recognizing and not even giving it the weight and what it deserves is, but I fall into that trap all the time where I never feel like I'm doing enough. Like I'm always going, and then I take out my phone and a picture of whatever, whether it be my kids or me as a blue belt or this not even existing. And I'll say, oh, you've done a lot of shit. Like, you know what I mean? But in the grind and the grunt work of it, it just becomes like the day to day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why, like, you know, even if that moment of pause is just like a 3-part gratitude list, right?
Yeah.
You know, like that's something that can acknowledge progress that you're making, whether it's on a daily basis, whether it's on a weekly basis, whether it's a body of years, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's something that I try to lean into, you know, just like really just lead with a heart of gratitude.
Yeah.
You know, which is why like these random acts that of kindness are really important, you know, and just like, you know, our boy Jesse Morgan, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, dude, I compliment 5 people randomly every day, right?
Yeah.
And you know, like my friend Gerald Conlon, he was on that call, that the Forge Brotherhood call as well, and you know, that's what he said. He's like, you know, the coolest thing in the world is just going up to someone, telling them something nice about themselves, with no expectation of a return on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we live in this ROI world. And more I'm beginning to understand that the more you give, the more that will come back to you. Yeah. You know, and I see that in micro instances in my life and larger instances in my life. It's really just about just having patience, you know, and from what you just shared with me, like, you know, that's something that, you know, both of us probably need to continue to practice patience. And get better at it. But like that's something that like I love to think about, you know, where it's like, hey, like pause, acknowledge the progress, and it's okay to want more.
Yeah. It's a hard, so 2 things come up for me in regards to, I wrote a thing on that. It's on my phone somewhere. I won't look for it now, but those moments of recognizing someone else and just giving that compliment. Those are, I forgot why I phrased it, but they're like these Christ-like moments, right? Like it's a form of like Christ consciousness. And yet we have this relationship with the world. You get like these impulses or the urges to be like, hey, I want to compliment that dude's shoes or the dude's beer, whatever it is. And we have this moment between like that inclination and actually doing it or not doing it. And like there's like this cultural filter that we have. It's like, I'm going to come off as a weirdo. He's going to think I'm an asshole. All this. But 9 maybe 10 out of 10 times when you go and do that, that person's like, oh, like, thank you, right? And it's such a good feeling, not only just because of the reciprocation of their energy, but just that you felt this thing, took action on it, and then, yes, the byproduct of that was reciprocation of like a good positive energy and feeling.
Yeah.
And it was just giving.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the last time I got complimented, which is even funnier.
Right.
But I know I have been, like,
Right,
recently,
of course.
you know, but like this morning, I told you how I bought that capo, like
Yeah.
his breakfast. I don't know what that dude went through this morning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know if he's on the like back to back, doubles, or
Right.
whether things are rough at home, or one of his kids got diagnosed with something, or he lost his grandma.
Right.
I don't know any of that, but what I do know is we all have lives. We all are normal people. People are people, and if you throw more kindness out there, and it opens up this space where people feel more open to just like authenticity, vulnerability, like all these things that I think you need to invite into your life in order to really truly grow.
Yeah.
Right.
And you might be having an amazing day and you just made it a little bit better, right? Like there might be nothing going on in his life that's brutal or anything. Like it could just be a really good day and you just were like, you know what? We're going to dial it up to 11 a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm going to buy you some breakfast. And that's all. And then that gives him even more energy to go out and receive the world in a way and pay it forward and all those things. So there is this giving, right, that isn't reciprocal. And to your point, we do live in a very ROI world where everything needs to have something like in it for you. And opening up that capacity to give, without even expecting or wanting the ROI, for some cosmic reason, seems to be one of the key ingredients to actually receiving more. Yeah. And not doing it from I'm going to get something out of this. Yeah. But that inclination that you have to be kind seems to really pay dividends.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, when I first launched my business, the reason I launched it was because I was talking to a lot of people who were very, very successful, right? They were clients at Equinox, having really good conversations with them. And I'd always ask them, what's like the coolest thing that you're doing right now? And they'd always talk about nonprofit work. They'd always talk about who they're helping with a nonprofit. They'd always talk about what foundation they're on the board of, all these different initiatives about helping people. And for me, like that stuck out. Like you just, you're a world-renowned chef. You're a CEO of a company. And this is the thing you're most proud of, right? The work that you do to help others in the respective community and beyond. That really just kind of shaped a lot of the things that I would do afterwards, bro. Like with the podcast, even when I talk to people about how they found their purpose and what they had to overcome, a lot of these stories, they're telling me like very traumatic hardship that they endured. And when they got to the other side of it, they had that moment of just understanding that the purpose is to really just help somebody else and to pay it forward. Because, me personally, like for much of my life, I was a taker. I was transactional, drugs and alcohol really did drive, the decision making in my life. And along the way, I hurt people, and I took from people. And I'm not talking about like physical items as much as I took their peace and I took their security and I took their love, but did not reciprocate it. And, after, making the decision to get sober and really starting to peel back the onion and the different layers of who I am, why I became that way. Because once you remove the drugs and alcohol, you still are left with a shell of a human being, a very hurt, scared human being, which is what I was. And what I was lacking in my life was, where am I giving? Because I'm doing a lot of taking here. And that's really, I think, the epitome of A, recovery, but B, also just leading a full life when it comes to, like, I became blessed with the gift of recovery, right? So
Did you go through AA or any formal program?
I go to AA. I'd been to rehab a bunch of times before.
Sure.
Like, so I just kind of called a friend who had already been sober for quite a while. Her name's Courtney. Dude, I knew what I had to do.
Sure, we all do.
Like I'd been in and out of different IOPs, rehabs, like for 15 years, right? I knew what I had to do. I heard it all. It's just about
what was the moment we were like, okay, like what was the moment where it all turned?
When a doctor told me I would die if like I continued to drink the way that I was living, and live the way that I was living. When he told me that was the first time my mortality had been tested. I mean, like, the crazy thing about it, like living in active alcoholism addiction is it's the only disease that tells you you're a piece of shit, but also tells you you're the center of the universe, right? So, you're kind of leading with ego, but deep down you're beating the shit out of yourself. And then you're just covering it all up with like with alcohol. You're just drowning the shit out of all of it.
Do you think that dynamic of conversation internally is something everybody experiences? Because I think we all have our moments of like, yeah, it's the Truman Show and it's all about you. And then we also have those moments where it's like today where I'm like, oh shit, like I forgot the SD card, and then I could but the result of that is not me saying I'm going to go and have a drink to numb either one of those voices. The result is it's like, all right, well, it is the fuck it is, and keep on moving, right? So do you think everyone has that, or was that the lens that caused you to drink?
I mean, I think, we all,
like, was that voice really loud that you couldn't override it with something other than drugs or alcohol?
Yeah. I mean, that like, people often think that alcohol is the problem when it comes to like alcoholism, right? No, alcohol is a solution for us. Right. Alcohol is a solution for fear. It's a solution for anger, and it's a solution for joy. And it's a solution for any emotion. Alcohol is a solution, right? We use it to celebrate. We use it to mourn. We use it
Sure.
whatever, Once we remove that solution, then what do we replace it with? And when you think about it from that context, and then now, you look at the whole body of the life, right? Look how much time I spent chasing this solution. So now I got to fill this time up with other things that are going to fill me in the same way that, alcohol did, right? And that is where the spiritual journey begins, right? That is when you take a really honest look in the mirror, alongside usually either a fellow alcoholic or, a therapist, and whatever, route you choose to go. You take an honest look at yourself, right? What am I lacking? Where can I find guidance? For me also, like, it had a lot to do with reconnecting with God and my relationship with God, and surrendering, just like a full surrender, bro. And you asked about that moment. So like when that doctor told me that, that was the first time my mortality was tested. Before, I'd gotten arrested, I had lost relationships, I had lost jobs, all these consequences, right? But now it's like, hey, you can die. Just, fucking liter of Tito's, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can kill you, right? And that was the first time someone told me that, right? And it's funny because like through the journey, like I've seen people die of alcoholism and drug addiction, like, we all have. But for it to be told to you, it's like, okay, I'm no longer the center of the universe. This ego of mine, what the fuck? I need to quiet that ego down, and I needed to reach out and actually have the humility to ask for help. And like Courtney like brought me down there. I knew what I had to do. I'd heard everything already, and it was really about just spending a lot of time by myself. And it was like those early days of just making a decision to change, which we see all these like amazing little reels about people talking about change and turning their life around. My personal experience, real deep change is lonely. It could be dark and it could be scary. And it was for me.
What did you do to facilitate those moments? Were you meditating? Were you journaling? just kind of sitting on it? What was your modality of internalization and kind of reflection?
Early on, it was just a fog. I was doing a lot of crying.
Yeah.
It was lonely. But I said to myself, hey, this is an opportunity. You know, like she flew me down to South Carolina. I was living in this little guest house. I can go down to the bar, you know, Uber down to the bar and hit up everybody back in Connecticut and tell them, oh yeah, like I'm changing, like I'm doing the right thing. And lie like I always do. Or it wasn't me who made the decision. This is where like I feel like I had that spiritual revelation and God kind of entered the frame, and I ended up like going to this AA meeting in downtown Beaufort, South Carolina. And lo and behold, this dude Scott comes up to me and just was like, dude, like I've been a day one too, you know, let's talk about it. Come over for dinner. And so I went over to his house to dinner later that day. I just like told him everything. You know, it was the first time I think I had a really, really, really honest conversation with someone about the things that I had done, how I was feeling, how hopeless I felt. And that was God placing all these people in my life, right? And then after that, it was, you know, like Ed Milet says, just start keeping small promises to yourself, right? And that's how it started, man. Just making my own bed, waking up at a regular time. You know, like all these like this normal things that like people do to like be normal human beings. That's what I had to start with, right? It's funny because like a lot of times like parents panic, they send people to rehab. All rehab is like, you know, a couple like workshops, right? You know, they maybe give you some like Librium and like some drugs to regulate yourself chemically, but it's just getting you into just like a normal life pathway, waking up at a normal time, eating 3 square meals, falling asleep at a normal time, and just like reprogramming like your biochemistry to in your routine, right? And that's what I did. You know, I just kind of like took that framework and then I, you know, found a gym nearby. So I started working out, stayed down there for like 45, 50 days. And it was really about just like incorporating good habits into my life, just like normal things. And continuing to just like connect with other sober people, right? I think it's like anything else. Like, you know, if you want to become a successful entrepreneur, right? Hang out with a bunch of successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I was going to say, how important is removing yourself from the community and the ecosystem and those people in your phone book that you know and say, hey, let's go get a this, let's go get a that, right? So kind of going down there and removing yourself and not having, yeah, you could have gone to the bar and all that stuff, but you didn't have the luxury of comfort and convenience of other people that would support that.
Hi everyone, I'm Vinny Brusco, founder and CEO of Agora Social Club. I'm also all of these things. Agora Social Club is Westchester County's hub for guys' mental fitness. Let me show you how we're revolutionizing the future of men's mental health. All accessible via key fob as a member, Agora Social Club seamlessly blends the community, comfortability, and convenience of a coffee shop, community workspace, gym, and recovery center. Since opening in April of 2024, Agora Social Club has helped hundreds of guys become better men. Through our men's groups, dads groups, community ruck walks, and 5Ks, guys are finding a deeper sense of connection through community. But don't just take my word for it. Check out our 5-star Google reviews where guys are sharing their transformative experiences. So what's next? We're looking for an investor to help us build Agora 2.0, a flagship location located right here in Larchmont, offering our members even more space, more amenities, and more community. By the end of 2030, we're targeting multiple locations in 4 major U.S. cities. We're excited to share our vision of the future of men's mental fitness.
Yeah. Well, the craziest thing about that, and this is what like a lot of people panic about, they're like, oh my God, like I gotta tell these people I can't hang out with them anymore. It's like these people don't give a shit, dude. You know what I mean? Like they don't. Like you're not the center of the universe.
Yeah.
That's your ego telling you that
They
oh my
need
God,
you.
need to
Yeah.
break up with them. Like no, bro. Like at the end of the day, like I've had like plenty of seasons in my life where people came and went, right? And they were here for this season and it was great. And there's some who have endured, you know, like, you know, I've known for my entire life, and I will probably know for my entire life. But that was something you like in that moment of desperation, in that moment of surrender. The last thing I thought about were my drinking buddies at the local pub that I drank at all the time, right? They're not gonna miss me. They're not even gonna realize I'm gone, right?
Yeah.
And when I ran into them, like, years after, it's just like, hey, like, you look great, like, what you been up to, and it's just like we have these fears of, rooted in like what other people are gonna think or how other people are gonna feel if and like you are not on their mind, right?
Yeah.
Just like they weren't really on my mind at that time. It was like time for me to um be selfish in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In regards to, God bless you. And you just sneezed, that means it's all true. The quote that you have behind you, there's a lot of quotes in here, is all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And that is one of my favorite quotes, because when you're sitting by yourself, and whether it be, through tears or through journaling or through meditation or sensory deprivation or whatever it is, when you sit with yourself, there's nowhere else to go. like you have to write, and again, people like, I can't meditate, and I understand that. But for those first 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes, like your monkey mind's like, there's a waste of time. I need to go food shopping. I got to pick up the kids. There's this. I got to do this thing. Blah, 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 blah. But when that dust settles and you allow that quiet to settle in, and all of a sudden, all the soot comes up, and you have to interface with all these different versions of yourself, and whether it be experientially, relationships, thoughts, feelings, and now you have to relate, empathize, yet disassociate yourself with everything you are.
Yeah.
That is such a crazy yet powerful dynamic to sit in. And that's where, to your point, the voice of God's heard. To your point, that's where the real change starts to happen, because you're shedding yourself in this capacity that is new, and it comes from silence.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like, I think it's really important to kind of sit with yourself. But when you're sitting with yourself, I think it's really, really also important to be very honest with yourself. Because if you aren't honest with yourself, if then who are you ever going to be honest with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I had to like come to wits with, right? We like to fool ourselves to think that other people look at us in a way that we want them to look at us, when we don't even look at ourselves that way. And I think that is fucking crazy.
Say that one more time. That's really powerful. Yeah.
I said, yeah.
He's like, I don't know. It's great.
Well, no.
Yeah, no, dude, that makes a lot of sense,
We
though.
like to believe that other people look at ourselves in a certain light.
Good, bad, and indifferent.
Internally gas ourselves up. Right?
Yeah.
And be like, this is how they see us. And we don't even look at ourselves that way, right? And I think you see that, I know I personally have done that, right? Like, and it's I guess maybe that's like imposter syndrome in a way.
Yeah.
But when you have that radical self-honesty with yourself, then it doesn't really matter how other people see you, right? You know who you are. You know your flaws. You know your shame triggers. You know your fears. You know the personalities that don't, vibe with you well.
Yeah.
That heightened self-awareness allows you to be more effective in all the relationships that you have in your life, whether it's your wife, your partner, whoever, right? All your relationships. It allows you to really, really be able to be effective in your work. And then it also allows you to help more people. That's what the name of the game is. How many people can we help?
And I think that has to actually happen in those pockets, right? It's like small, like very micro internally.
Yeah.
Right. Then it goes to like fairly immediate, close relationships and dynamics.
Yeah.
And then community and broader reach, right? And like it happens in those in different facets, right? It's like, maybe it's, this part of you that you have this relationship with that you now kind of shift and change, and you get this new lens or go, oh, okay. you're sweating when you don't have the SD cards, and now you go, oh, okay, it's all right. And then all of a sudden, like, that dynamic happens with a significant other or a parent or whomever, and now you can kind of give them that grace that you now give yourself. And then all of a sudden you bring that to like a community sense, and now you're buying the cop at the bagel import in Empire Bagels. Shout out Empire Bagels.
Nice PBJ extra perky.
I'm gonna go afterwards. You're buying the cop there some breakfast, right? So it can happen small and then it happens big.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like you need to like continue to be having these conversations with yourself, right?
Yeah,
Like
totally.
where it's like, hey, and like really being able to identify the emotion, right? So let's simple thing that's super relatable for
Sure.
everyone, right? Driving, someone cuts you off, right? The immediate like pang of like, go fuck yourself, right?
You're right.
Why was that so triggering for me?
Right.
I'm not in a rush. I was driving safely, like, why? And it's because how dare he do that to me?
But I think there's
Right.
also
know?
a fight or flight thing that comes in too, right?
Yeah.
Right. So can you override that? Like, can the thing happen, and can you override it before you actually react and go fuck that guy?
Yeah.
Right. Like, so yes, there's a component of that to it, but then there's also a component to is there an element in there where I'm getting triggered because of this other thing?
The reason I brought that up, and I was talking to you about like how about Laura Sabia, who she's like she's become a mentor to me. She I work for her at the magazine at Greenwich Lifestyle. But one thing that she always says when I bring her to these different, hey, let's do this. I get really excited sometimes about projects that I think it's a really good idea. And she goes, is the juice worth the squeeze? Right. So if we do this, the amount of work, the amount of time, the amount of potential money, is it worth the squeeze? And she thinks in that way, but like I take that and apply that towards your emotions, right? Is it worth it to me to get as fired up about this right now, right? Like, and that's something like I have to do when I'm feeling any heightened emotion, right? If it's anger, anger really is like the main one, frankly.
Sure.
Is it really worth it for me to get like angry about this? Is there like a logical solution that anger isn't going to contribute to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I do that with my emotions, it kind of allows me to just like be like balanced. I mean, and just kind of just bump with it, right? Because like, I don't know, like there's so many things that I see happen to others that are like there's so many people and so many things that people's lives are a lot harder than mine. I have a good life, right? I'm alive. I've endured all of the self-harm that I did through my addiction. I survived all that, right? I have a loving family. I have an opportunity to sit here with you on the couch. I know where the CVS in Larchmont is now, right?
And the Staples.
And the Staples, right? Got a mini tour of Larchmont this morning. Found a great smoothie spot. Like where am I entitled to feel sorry for myself at any juncture? I'm not. I have a good life. I had a great day, and I'm blessed. And if I continue to kind of just like navigate life that way, I just feel like what can go wrong?
Yeah.
It's just like such a better perspective to have. But it took a lot of work for me to get here because I used to be in I'm the victim. Why doesn't everyone notice me? I'm a piece of shit kind of internal monologue.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that is where comfort was. Comfort is the worst addiction. I found comfort in that mindset. Now I find comfort in just like acceptance, and just taking life on life's terms and just like enjoying it, man.
Yeah. So how do you stay in that energetic frequency of, we'll call it grateful, we'll call it joyful, right? How do you stay in that space, but then also be aspirational? Because those two things, like, how do we stay, and I think about this kind of very often, is like, how do I stay grounded and grateful for everything I have? And I pray every night and I pray every morning, and it's just simple, just thank you for all these amazing things. Thank you. And then yet there's so many things I want to achieve, so many goals that I have. And some of them, yes, we could say is rooted in ego. Some of it's rooted in like we could attribute goals and aspirations to all these different dynamics of myself, right? And I will. I say, oh, where does that really come from? Like, why do you want? But how do you stay personally grounded in the gratitude for Empire Bagel, and then also have aspirations to do more and be more, and not say, I need to be seen, I need to be heard, I need to be validated?
I think for me, what works is just understanding that to like incrementalize, compartmentalize everything. You know what I mean? Where it's like today, like I have this goal, right? What can I do today to get closer to it?
Right.
And if I could stay in the moment of today and in this present moment and understand that it's all gonna like accumulate, you know, like I'm a big Kobe guy, right? Like, and it's like kind of falling in love with the work, right? I think if you fall in love with the work and, you know, for me, like fall in love with the connections and falling in love with the opportunities to help, I'm confident that whatever goal I set, because whatever goal I set, God might have something that far exceeds that goal for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying like I don't like to box myself into goals and I don't want to set milestones, but I'm also like open to all these other different avenues that can yield, you know, fruits that I didn't even really ever anticipate. And I think that's kind of how I do it. Like understand like, hey, this is the goal, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen maybe a year from now. I don't know what opportunity is going to be present, right?
Yeah.
So if I fixate on one outcome, I might be ignoring a world full of, you know, other opportunities that exceed it, right?
Yeah. I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine, and I was talking about just like goals and aspirations of Agora. And I put like some number out there, and he goes, why are you limiting yourself? I was like, whoa. I was like, whoa. Right? Because we put these governors on it, even if the number is astronomical to this version of me that said, oh, Agora's gonna be worth X amount of dollars and X amount of years and blah, blah, blah. And to me, it's like, wow, that's amazing. And he just hit it back. He's like, why are you limiting yourself? Why is that the number? Why isn't it higher? And I think you know, what's the expression? Like you rise to the level of your goal or whatever, or your, whatever it is. I don't know the exact terminology, but it is this idea of like, exactly what you're saying. Why are you boxing yourself in at this? And that could be in any facet of your life, right? Even as a parent, like, why am I boxing in the dynamic with my kids as this? Why am I not being more fluid with the way I show up for them and the way that, you know, why is it like, we gotta get to school now? Like, yes, there's time restraints, but why can't I ebb and flow in this energy to that end goal versus being like rigid? I remember one morning, my kids were sleeping in bed. My wife is a teacher, so she goes off to work, and I'm doing the morning routine with them, and they're both still in bed. I haven't even said good morning to them, right? I might have like maybe earlier on, but like, hey, good morning, whatever. And I'm like, guys, it's time to get up. We gotta go to school, blah, blah, blah. And I literally caught myself, and I just stopped. Like, what are you doing right now? Like, who wants to wake up like this?
Yeah.
Like, stop. Like, I'm literally pacing. I'm making them lunch. I'm just yelling across the house. And I stopped myself. I walked in my daughter's room. I was like, good morning. It's this day. You're going to have a great day today. Gave her a kiss. I was like, we got to get up for school. Give you a couple more minutes, and you got to get dressed. And she's like, okay, Dad, no problem. Go to my son's room. Same thing. I'm like, good morning, buddy. Blah, blah, blah. And just like, had to stop myself because I was like in this whirlwind of this is the goal. We have to get out of the house. And I was able to like just remove myself. Like, who wants to wake up like this right now?
Yeah.
So I had to stop myself and just, you know, again, going back to that moment of like the thing happens, but are you self-reflective and honest enough with yourself to say, this is not worth the squeeze right now?
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, I mean, mornings can be like that, you know?
Yeah.
And they're so important though, you know, because they set the stage and the foundation for your whole day. And then,
Sure.
you know, obviously like with your children, like that's going to set the foundation for their day,
Right.
you know, but it's good to have that self-awareness to be like, oh shit, like let's restart this. And let's make this.
And listen, I've had many a morning where I'm like, just get in the car, we gotta go, right? And then I get in the car, I'm like, guys, I don't want to start the day like this. Like, this is not how I want to send you guys off to school. Like, this is so not cool. But it happens, and that's also like the human part of it too, is like accepting like this is also like I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to do the best I can for today and this very micro moment of whatever, business, parenting, husbanding, sonning, brothering, whatever role I'm in this moment. I'm just trying to be the best version of that for me right now.
Yeah. Dude, I love how you talked about like perfection and the pursuit of perfection and how it's just like a farce, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things that I do, I go to Silver Hill Hospital in New Canaan, and I speak to their adolescents on Main 3. And, you know, oftentimes, you know, I was literally actually brought in there to be just this recovery rep to talk about recovery to them. But, you know, as I continued to do it, I realized that, you know, maybe some of these kids had substance issues, but a lot of them were rooted in mental health.
Sure.
And I would, when I first started, it'd be like me just monologuing. And as I got a better feel for the environment, now it's more just like an open discussion that I try to have with these kids. And I usually go around the room and I'm like, hey, who are you? Where you from? And if you're comfortable telling, you know, why you're here. And, you know, it's so sad because I hear a lot of these anywhere between 13 and 17-year-old kids who are trying to take their own life, you know, and based on like that pressure and that pursuit of perfection and that need to have attention and all of these things. And, you know, one of the things I always tell them, I'm like, you guys aren't here, but, you know, like, you know, I point to the window and go out there. Nobody knows what they're doing. Everyone's a hot mess. Everyone's just trying to do the best they can. And I think it's really important for you guys to know that your best is enough. You know, you don't need to compare yourself to anyone else other than who you are and who you want to be and how you feel. And, you know, I think that's just like so important. That's something that, you know, kind of full circle moment talking about like, you know, where I was in these different rooms, the more and more people I meet, the more and more I understand that like hey, everyone's going through their thing. There is no such thing as perfection. And the best we could do is, you know, give each other grace, right? And the worst thing we could do for ourselves, right behind your head, comparison is a thief of all joy, right? Because then it leads us down that mental rabbit hole, you know, and then we have all these, I think Brene Brown, she calls it these prerequisites for worthiness, right? And when we don't meet these prerequisites, we tell ourselves we're no longer worthy of love, of the feeling of safety, of whatever it is. And it's so dangerous, right?
Yeah. That's powerful, man. Yeah, I've had that realization in different stages of my journey of people really don't know what they're doing. Like truly.
Dude,
like
crazy.
We don't even know why we're here. We don't even know what we're doing here. We really don't even know how we got here based like again, belief system aside. So, how does anyone actually know what the fuck is going on? Like when you get to that deep of thought of the world around you, it kind of becomes silly. Like, yes, I understand the importance of like waking up and doing these things and all. And at the same time, you can go down a nihilist component and say, well, it's kind of all pointless.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's the other side of it. Right. So it is this ultimate yin and yang of experience where it's like, it's all kind of pointless, but yet that's the beauty of it is that like no one really gives a fuck. Like to your earlier point, like nobody really cares that it's your own internal world. Right. It's like, the idea, I forgot where I read it, but it was the only thing that actually exists is what your eyes see, and that like everything behind, like everything you don't see is just filling in these illusions. So like this wall doesn't actually exist. It's only comes to existence when I turn and see it, right? So it's kind of this weird idea of like everything's this first person narrative, and it's all what you feed inside of this container that allows you to navigate the world, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah. And that being said, which is why you should do what makes you happy. You should do what makes you feel good. You should hang out with the people who fill your cup and you fill theirs, regardless of what, John, in the corner office might think, regardless of what, people, in your Twitter feed or your Instagram feed might comment, right?
Sure.
Like just do what makes you happy.
And go even deeper, regardless of anyone who's in your inner circle.
Yeah.
Right. And that could be anybody, right? That could be a parent. That could be, because again, people are just putting their own restrictions of their capacity to think big on you, right? They're putting their governors on your engine. And if you allow them to do so, and it could be for the best intentions, it's gonna restrict what you can do. And again, you're gonna go, well, I think I could do this, and then someone's gonna come along and go, well, why are you limiting yourself? That's a person you want around.
Yeah.
That's the person you want to go, hey, I'm thinking this, and they go, why you think bigger? And it doesn't mean that you may accomplish all these things, but you sure as hell won't if you don't try.
Yeah.
And if you keep this restriction on your mindset and capacity, then you're definitely not going to do it.
Dude, you're so right, and you're talking about like sometimes it is the people who love you the most, right?
Right.
Projecting their own fear,
Right.
And that was something that I have had to better understand when it came to my father.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I always say, and I say this all the time, you got to pre-qualify the advice you get from people, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, like there's so many people, unqualified people, giving me advice on things that they are not qualified to give advice to me on. That,
Sure.
let alone like other things, right?
Right.
And it's like, so now one of the things that I do when I'm legit at a crossroads and want some guidance is I write a list of people. I'm like, have they done what I want to do? Are they good at it? And do they have their resources? I'm not talking about money as much as like the connections, the whatever it is.
The lens. Do they have a lens to see this through the way that I'm not seeing it?
Exactly. Can they offer me a different perspective and
Yeah.
different approach? And I make a list of these people, and I just go right down the list and I call them. And that's what I did. Like as I started, with this recovery coaching, and I got the advice from the right people, got my name out there, letting them know that I'm open to taking clients, and through that, it's been amazing because they're like, hey, like I got this guy, like that. Just the other day, that someone called me and was like, I got this like silver transport. This dude needs to go from like, it was a long one. I couldn't take it, but it was long. It was like from like Virginia to like this rehab in Massachusetts, and you can't fly and blah blah. And I was like, I couldn't take it, but now these people are thinking of me, right?
Right.
But it's all because I connected with people who were in the space and who, like, it made sense to ask them for advice.
Of
right?
course.
Rather than, John, who is like, works at my favorite deli and I love him to death and he makes a great sandwich, but like John's advice is mute here.
Right. Right.
Like, I think that's something that people make a mistake. They take advice from unqualified people and they hold a lot of weight to their opinions.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, dude, my friend does this all the time. It's very frustrating. And I'm just like, and I walk him through it. I'm like, well, have they, I ask him all the necessary questions. Have they done this before? Like,
Right.
Blah, blah. And I lead him to the place where he's like, yeah, maybe I should get a different opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that simple, but it's also that difficult. And especially in like building Agora 2.0, everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants to offer some type of thing that, this is great, this is terrible, and we've heard everything when it comes to it. Oh, this is wrong, that's right, this is good, this is bad, all these, and it came to a point where me and my partner were like, we gotta just stop talking to people. Like we know the vision, we know the mission, and unless these people are in, and some of them were in positions that we would say like, wow, we want to be there one day, but they didn't again, going back to that previous point, like the energy, right? And again, it's one of those people who are like, wow, like let's talk to this guy.
Yeah.
The energy's not there, and it came to a point where I was like, I really don't care what's thrown our way, I wouldn't take it because the energy's not right. And then you meet other people that are not maybe giving you something, but the energy is so dialed in and they're offering this insight and this perspective that's exactly to your point where it says they've gone where I'm looking to go. It only makes sense for me to listen to them. And that's like some of the power of like the men's group that we do here is that, you know, we have guys that have kids in college. We have guys that have kids who are older. We have guys that have newborns. I have an 11, 6-year-old. So we're all in the framework of dads. We're all offering each other this, oh, I went through that.
Yeah.
Oh, I experienced a version of that. This is what I did. And you could do something there or not, but it's giving you a perspective of life that says, oh, I'm not alone. What I'm experiencing is not new to anyone on earth. And I now have some lens of how to manage it. Not handle it, but manage it. And whether I do something or not about, that's up to me. I have to take action. But I'm in a position now where I have more knowledge than I did before.
Yeah, dude, no, totally. And the best is when you can have a conversation with someone and you could talk about the situation and you could also talk about like how you're feeling in the situation.
Yes.
And you know, like I'm sure like you know, it's particularly as a father and being like, listen, like I feel like super perplexed about this and like
Yeah.
you know, like being able to just like convey those emotions to someone it's really, really important because I think oftentimes, even like, yeah, like in a professional setting, when you're asking someone for advice, it's okay to also be like, this is how it's making me feel.
Mm.
Particularly if they've gone through that, you know, situation before. Did it make you feel this way? And, alongside the like, you know, strategic or whatever practical solution, like, how were you able to navigate the emotional roller coaster that aligned it so that I can implement the solution with confidence, right?
Dude, 100%.
Because that's super important to also address.
It's more important. It's more important than the practicality and the implementation of tactics because those tactics might have worked for them in their situation. And if you don't have an emotional regulated state that you're handling the situation in, then it's going to completely squirrel the whole scenario. And again, they might give you all these amazing practical steps that just don't apply to what you need to do. It might be radically different, but it's energetically the same. And if you can tap into that energy and go, oh, I was feeling this way, excited, sad, depressed, whatever it is, then you can navigate from a foundation of stability because you're emotionally aligned, right? And you also, again, to the earlier point, you don't feel like you're alone. You know, you're taught, and that's the importance of mentors. And it doesn't have to be this big reciprocal thing and all this. It's just, hey, I'm going through this thing, and I have a lot of mentors. How did you went through it? How do you handle it? How did you handle it? And then you could say, okay, yeah, that's a tactic I can implement, but more importantly, that's an emotional state that I'm feeling that's validated.
Yeah, no, totally. You know, but it takes a level of vulnerability to have those conversations, right?
Yeah.
You know, because when you're going to someone with a problem and you're prepared to also talk to them about, you know, hey, this is how this is making me feel. I don't know if I should be feeling this way about it or should I even be excited?
Right.
You know, like having the ability to be vulnerable when you're going through hard things is really, really, really important.
Yeah. I want to talk about the coaching that you're doing because I think it's an amazing thing. As someone who has done coaching, I have coaching clients. I know the importance of that, and yet the difference between that and like therapy. So how does coaching with recovery kind of come into play versus like a therapeutic approach?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And obviously, you know, so I had a recovery coach myself, right? And, you know, alongside that recovery coach, I was also working a 12-step program. And then I had a therapist. The role of a coach is to be a resource, you know, and I think that's really, really important. That's like your primary role is to be a resource to your recovering client, right? And, you know, from my experience with my coach, you know, we met weekly. He was actually Vegas based. We met on Zoom weekly. And really, it allowed me to just put everything on the table when it comes to the different components of my life. Financials and career, personal relationships, and and then also touch upon my past and things that I've gone through, so he had a better understanding of what was rooted in why these things were obstacles for me. I look at it as a 12-step program is really used to teach you how to remain sober, right? Like any 12-step program, it's like, you remove the substance, whether it's drugs, sex, alcohol, whatever. And then you go through these remaining steps because it allows you to um stay sober, right? You get sober, then you stay sober, right? And provides you with the tools to do that. Therapist, I think is very rooted in talking, unpacking the past and past traumas and, from the clinical standpoint, but who's the person in the middle? Who's the guy who you could be like, hey, like, like this is what I'm trying to do here. Like, what would you do in this position? And, what could you steer me in the right direction? Like for me, like I work with a couple clients right now where it's just, we're having conversations about like how they're showing up in their day to day. And I'm supporting them and providing them with resources in that sense. And really, it's just like a lot of motivational interviewing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And getting them to understand that through my lived experience, this is how I was able to solve these problems. And leading them to the water, or leading the horse to the water, right?
Yeah.
And it's really, really fulfilling, bro, because it kind of fills that gap. I don't have any letters after my name. I'm non-reporting. They like building that level of trust that you have with the clients I have is really, really important, because that allows me to, for them to have a safe space to share things that they otherwise don't feel comfortable sharing in a clinical setting, or in a setting where it may not particularly have to do with like 12-step like recovery approach.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, man, it's super rewarding.
Yeah, the coaches are interesting. It's an interesting dynamic because it does dabble into the world of therapy, at least like from my experience with clients. And yet there's this other, and I went to school for mental health counseling. I was pursuing my master's at one point, but whatever, side note, they do start to blend into each other to some capacity, but the role of the coach is now, okay, and now we go and do this, right? Like, okay, we're like, there's an expression in jiu-jitsu like and wrestling, where wrestling stops, jiu-jitsu begins. So it's like almost where therapy stops, coaching begins, right?
Yeah.
Like, it stops at, and I have an amazing therapist, but there's a lack of implementation. She'll tell me like do some things and all that stuff, but there's another component when it comes to coaching where it's like, all right, here's some strategies, here's some things, here's how you're going to move forward. Let's circle back. But there is this overlapping of, because again, how do we move forward if we don't know where we've been? How do we not, how can I offer you insight and perspective to how you're going to move forward, or how you are showing up in the moment if I don't have some context to how you've been in the past, right? Yeah. So there is this overlapping thing, which again, I think is super beneficial to have both in your life.
Yeah, no, totally. And in the recovery field, there's like coaching and companionship. And companionship is really you spend 24/7 with them, right? And you are walking alongside them. And I don't want to say supervising, because I think supervising puts you in like an authoritative role as much as you're their companion. Like you accompany them to, their day to day, because they're in a place where they don't feel safe in their recovery, right?
Is that early on, or is that kind of?
I know people who've done companion work and they've lived with clients for months, right?
But I'm saying, is that early on someone's recovery? Like, are they coming into recovery early on and they need a companion, or do they get to a point where they're in recovery, and all of a sudden it's like, they need something else now?
Usually it's early on, or like following a relapse.
Right? Okay.
And their family's like, hey, listen, like, we're worried about him, and he's agreed to like have a companion. And you basically, if it's kind of like a remote situation, like you're living in hotels next to each other or whatever, or you don't live with them at their residence, wherever it is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then, the coaching
Is that considered like an extreme approach or no?
it's pretty common.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty common. Like there's a lot of, there's a lot of people who do that. There's a lot of different like
Are you going to like work with them?
Oftentimes they're not working in the
Okay.
during this.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
It's rather than sending them to rehab, you hire a companion almost.
Got it. Okay. Makes sense.
Like it's usually for, I mean, I don't want to say usually, because
Who knows, right?
everyone's different, but I've never heard of an instance where the person was actually going to work.
Got it. Makes sense.
And then coaching is kind of just like that dump, more just like, structured and, like, but you're like not like a 12-step sponsor for them, right?
Right.
It's funny because one of the things, and I just did like a seminar on it, and where they were talking about like the gray line between a coach and like crossing that line between a friend, and I've seen that happen.
Sure.
And I've seen that where it's like, all right, like this client, she's a client, not your friend. And I think particularly when it comes to recovery coaching, it's really important to be cognizant of that line, to establish clear boundaries and to convey your role in their recovery and in their development, because the second you cross that line, particularly when you're dealing with an addict or an alcoholic, where their default is to manipulate.
Yeah.
Their default is to turn people into quote unquote enablers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how I was. Like I turned everyone around me into an enabler. And being really cognizant of that line is really important, because they're going to be telling you like really personal things, and you're going to be guiding them through these moments and these parts of their life.
Sure. Yeah. That, and it's weird because it is a fine line, and the truth of it is that those people probably do need a friend, right? And a friend that's outside of judgment, a friend that's outside of the community they were part of before that led them to drinking. They don't probably have, I'm not assume here, but there's probably not a big ecosystem of people in around them that's supporting them in a real true way, without the judgment and the shame, and showing up with empathy and discernment and being present with them. So it is a weird role where they're coming to you as a friend who needs someone, and yet you have to wear both hats, but really, really be mindful of the hat you're putting on that moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I don't think this like falls for just like, addicts and alcoholics. I think there's like this thing where, it's nice to be understood.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where, coaching really, where you really make progress when it comes to coaching, when you're really able to understand where someone's coming from and understanding why they're making the decisions they're making, and understanding where they're reacting or where they're being reactive, and being on the opposite side of that, right? Where, I had a coach who really did a good job of trying to understand me and who I was and what I was feeling. And I think that's why he was really, really effective with me. So, I'm excited about this, like obviously like it is like the beginning stages, and I'm like hopeful to like partner with like different organizations throughout the East Coast, frankly, so that I that just like really start to help people one-on-one in the way that I want to. Like I think the podcast has been great in helping people, and I get like feedback all the time about how like, hey, I listened to Vinny Brusco's episode, and like you're super powerful, blah blah. That's great, and I love that impact that we're having there. But now really just being able to work intimately one-on-one with people is something that like it's just like filling my cup in a way that I didn't think it would.
Yeah, and going back to the earlier point of you've been there, so you know how to show up, and you know how to give those warnings, or see how that road plays out, and you could offer that insight and perspective from a true place, and now being on the other side of it. And how long have you been sober?
4 years in August.
Yeah, so
3 years and 8 months, 3 years and 9 months.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you, bro.
To be on the other side of that with some time, right, behind you, offers you such credibility in that community. I think it's powerful, man. It's amazing. It's cool to hear.
Yeah, man. I mean, because like that's the thing. That's like the nature of like how we're able to heal through this disease, right? Like addiction's like the only disease that tells you you don't have it, right?
Mhm.
Period. And it also like I've sat in rooms with other people, right? And the stories that are being told, if normal people were in the room, they'd be like, these people need to all be committed that they did such things, right? And when you're sitting amongst other like alcoholics and addicts, it's just like just another day hearing another story of like the choices that people made and where it got them, right? And understanding that these aren't bad people, right? They were just deep in the disease. And I think that's something that like needs to be, I mean, I think it is actually like acknowledged like widely now, but it's a battle. It's a battle, and I've seen people battle, and I've seen people battle, and then go out and lose their life, right? And like, so that's the thing that's like if I could save a couple lives in this whole process, like God, I love that, because someone saved mine, right?
Yeah, and that's the true work of, and whatever your belief system is, and obviously we both resonate with the word God. That's the work, right? That's what comes through when you sit in those moments of silence. And although it may not have started that way, but the more you sit with that and you learn more about yourself and you hear that voice of God or that feeling, or you do those acts of service to other people by buying someone breakfast in the bagel shop, those again is a compound effect, and it ends up like just creating more of it and more of it and more of it. And that's where it takes you to give and to be of service to others in a way that you can't even imagine.
Yeah, dude. I mean, like, so much of it was spiritual. Like once I removed like drugs and alcohol from me, like I had a God-sized hole that I need to fill, right? And that's when I had to lean into the spiritual component of recovery, bro. Like understanding that dark loneliness that I felt, that I was the only one that this so shame. Like, no, like, dude, God never turned his back on me. He was sitting next to me the whole time.
Yeah.
I just needed to reach out to him. And when I started to do that, right, I felt it, and I started to see it. And I like to call them God shots, when like this is those little signs, man, when you're like, wow, that's God working in my life, right? Like finding that bagel shop, frankly, today. I was like, damn, dude, like I was like, didn't know where to go, like, it just kind of like showed up, right? Like just like little things.
I didn't even know where it was. It's around the corner. I was like, where is that? You're like, and then we were on our tour of Larchmont. You're like, it's right there. I was like, oh.
But like, you know what I mean? Like you could choose to like look at the little things that like happen as coincidence, or
Sure.
that's God working in your life.
Sure.
But as I started to fill that hole more with spiritual practices and understanding that I am not the captain of my ship, because when I was the captain of my ship, it ended with a doctor telling me I was going to die, right? When I was making every decision, that's where it got me. I needed to take my hand off the steering wheel, get out of the car, walk around, get in the passenger seat, open that door, and let God sit in the driver's seat for a minute, right? And once I did that, things started to get better.
Was religion a big part of your life growing up?
It's funny. I was raised Jewish, bro. Like went through Jewish day school, and growing up until I got bar mitzvah when I was 13. Jewish holidays were like really important. My mom passed away in 2013, and she was the one who really kind of like spearheaded the Jewish faith, right? The girl I've been with for the past 14
Get this right.
Yeah.
Get this right.
She's her family's Christian, so like we celebrate Christmas. My dad's Indian. He's like, he's Hindu. We do like the Diwali. So like I've had this cocktail of different faiths that have come in and out of my life.
Sure.
Right? And the one thing I understand about all of them is it's just about being a good person and trusting God and being good to others. Right. And that's enough for me. You know, that it really is. And it's something that I lean into, and I, you know, like I water the relationship that I have with God just like I water any other relationship. I talk to him regularly. Now he lets me drive, and I invite him into my passenger seat, and I talk to him when I'm on traffic in 95. You know, like those type of little things, you know, I think it's important. It's like any other relationship, bro. The more connected I am to him, the more I can trust myself. And the more likely it is that I will not end up on a bar stool by the end of the night. And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
You know?
That's perfect. We're wrapping up in 2 minutes. This has been a amazing conversation.
Yeah, dude.
I really appreciate it. I took so many nuggets, and again, just that reframe and that insight and that perspective. So thank you for doing this. We jumped a bunch of hurdles of mail and SD cards, so I appreciate you riding with me. Where can people find out more? Where can they check out the podcast? Where can they find out about your coaching services? Where's all that available?
Yeah. Listen, guys. Well, first, thank you.
Of course.
And my man, thank you so much.
Yeah, Nate rode through it.
Nate setting everything up and being patient with us. But you can find me at, you can go to my website, www.adamvohra.com. You can be able to go to the podcast and all the links there. My coaching program is there as well. I do encourage you, like if there's anybody who you know who might be struggling, might be hurting, I'd be happy to talk to you or them, you know, and, you know, get this going, and like, you know, like maybe we could help them. And, but you can go there. You can follow me on Instagram at Adam Vohra _, and you know, everything's there. But, if not, reach out to Vinny.
I'll help you.
He can connect me.
Everything will be in the show notes.
Dude, super grateful to be here. I love the place.
Thank you.
And yeah, dude, amazing.
Appreciate it, dude.